everybody, and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're walking in Memphis. The topic of this, CWA Wrestling from August 23rd, 1986. If you haven't seen my shows here before, I grade everything on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right into it. Right off the bat, we get an interview with Tracy Smothers, followed by one with Juicy Johnny, which is going to lead into a match for the Mid-American Championship. Kind of interesting. Very young Tracy Smothers here. Obviously, it's 1986. I love Tracy Smothers. I think he's a great wrestler. When I was watching this, and I remember Juicy Johnny a very little bit. It was one of those things where when he popped up, I remembered him, but if you would have asked me, it would have been the 10,000th wrestler I named if you asked me to name all the wrestlers I know. I digress. With this being Memphis, I wonder if Juicy J from 3-6 Mafia, who has said, and I know 3-6 Mafia are wrestling fans, I wonder if he took that name from Juicy Johnny. Maybe. He would have most likely been watching this show. Most of Memphis was watching this show, so it would have been a cultural thing and easy for him to do. I digress into the match. Like I said, we got Tracy Smothers versus Juicy Johnny for the Mid-American Championship. I thought this was a solid opening match. I thought it was pretty good. A little bit short for me. I think it could have went a little longer. Smothers picks up the win here, keeps his championship. I'm giving this a 3. Next up, we have an interview with J.D. Costello, another person, again, that I was reminded of by watching this. J.D. Costello is actually a really good manager. He's managing Mr. Universe, who I wasn't familiar with. They do an interview here, which leads us to Mr. Universe versus David Johnson. Basically a squash match here. Nothing really to talk about. I'm giving this one a 2. I thought it was okay. I mean, there wasn't anything really there to even impress me, to be honest with you. The guy looked like $1 million, but in the mid-'80s there was 1,050 different guys that looked exactly like him. He basically had that Kerry Von Erich Ultimate Warrior build. Big muscle-bound bodybuilder, may or may have not been on steroids. I mean, it is that era. So, again, just wasn't that impressive of a match. Next up, we get an interview with Memphis legend Tojo Yamamoto with Akio Sato and Tarzan Goto. I don't know why I was having a brain fart there, sorry. Basically talking about Goto and Sato here, which is kind of cool seeing Goto and Sato back at this time frame, because they would both go on to be more. Tarzan Goto would become a major star in the mid-'90s. Sato would have a little bit of success as part of the Orient Express, and also obviously in Japan as well. Then it's a local promo there for a match they have coming up. Then we go back to an interview with Kenny D introducing the Killer. Now, I do want to mention this. Good friend of the channel, the American Samurai Bucky 749. Awesome channel, by the way. Check the description here. There's going to be a link to his channel. Go check out his stuff. He's a really cool guy. Also, there's going to be a link to the video I reviewed for this. I forgot to say that in the beginning. There'll be a link for this exact show that I watched in that description as well. But American Samurai, I'm throwing this to you. I'm diverting my knowledge to you. This picture here, sorry, I was pointing the wrong way at first, of the Killer. I don't remember the Killer, because obviously there's been 1 million people named the Killer. Is that the Snowman? I know you'll know. If that's a snowman, let me know. Tell me down here in the comments. I'm really interested. I think it is. I'm almost 100% sure it is. I would say probably 80 to 90% sure. But his face is too covered for me to know for sure. Anyway, I digress. We get a handicap match with the Killer versus the Red Demons. The Killer picks up the win here in a very impressive form. I'm giving this one a 3. Really good way. The difference between this and Mr. Universe is you put over the Killer as being a killer. He bulldozed through 2 guys instead of just your normal blah blah squash match that Mr. Universe had. And if I'm right, if it is the Snowman, he's a guy that has a ton of charisma. Even in this iteration, even if it's not the Snowman, that whoever it was that was playing the Killer had a ton of charisma. Even with a mask on, you could feel the charisma coming through. Now, coming from that, our next match, we get the aforementioned Akira Sato and Tarzan Goto versus Benny Traylor and Jerry Garman. This was a really solid match. I really enjoyed this. I liked how Sato and Goto were wearing the similar gear. I liked how they worked together here. Obviously, it's a highlight for them two to show us what they can do. Sato and Goto pick up the win here. I'm giving this a 4. Like I said, I really enjoyed this. This was really good for me. Next up, we get an interview with Playboy Larry Sharp and Bambi Bigelow. I always love seeing young Bam Bam and seeing how different he was. And it really wasn't that different, but how he evolved over the years. How little pieces you'd get a little bit more. Bam Bam became more and more polished. And obviously from the beginning, he was a stud. He was a guy that was going to be a massive star. Which leads us right into another handicap match. Bam Bam Bigelow versus David Haskins and Larry Santana. Bam Bam plows through these guys much like the Killer did just a bit ago. Showing his dominance, showing that he's a force to be reckoned with. I'm giving this match a 4 again. Much like I said with the Killer, this is how you do a squash match. And it's not just that it's a handicap squash match. It really highlighted Bam Bam Bigelow in a way that made him look special, made him look different. Again, traverse that with what they did with Mr. Universe. Mr. Universe looked just like every other muscle-bound wrestler of the era in his match. And that's my opinion. Now, coming from that, we get an interview with Eddie Marlin, talking about the Southern Tag Team Champions, Fire and Flame, which, again, I might be wrong. Tell me if I am. I believe it's Don Bass, and I know one's Roger Smith, because Roger Smith's mask gets taken off during the match. Spoiler alert. Basically telling them if they lose the Southern Tag Championships, they have to unmask. Which leads us to an interview with all of them, leading us into a match against a surprise team, which is Phil Hickerson, which if you're not familiar with Phil Hickerson, and you watch the video or you see that picture there, it does not do him justice. Phil Hickerson was an absolute badass. Dig up the Ultimate Warrior and ask him about that. Ask him how badass of a man Phil Hickerson was. His tag team partner, Giant Hillbilly, which if you're not familiar with that name, also went by Uncle Elmer or Plowboy Frazier. And this is another one for you, for American Samurai. And I know, I'm sorry, I'm making you do a lot of work here. I'm going to defer this to you again. I know it's Plowboy Frazier. I know Plowboy Frazier, not a great wrestler, but he did have a following. People in Memphis knew exactly who Plowboy Frazier was, even without him being Uncle Elmer. I understand why he couldn't use Uncle Elmer, because WWE or WWF at the time probably didn't allow him to carry it on. Why did he not go back to Plowboy Frazier? Why did he go with Giant Hillbilly? I would think he would go to Plowboy Frazier because it's a known name in that territory. If you know the reason why, let me know again. Again, I'm sorry, man. I know that you know some of this stuff. I know you have a deeper knowledge of this territory than I do, which is, I'm going to lean on you. I just didn't understand why he didn't just go by it. I digress. Back to the match. It's a pretty solid match going on. Ends up being a double disqualification where they fight outside of the ring. Hickerson's bleeding all over the place. He, like I said previously, he manages to take the mask off of Roger Smith. We end up with a double count out, which I'm going to give this all a 3. Leads us afterwards to an interview with Hickerson and Hillbilly. They talk about it. The feud keeps going on. Again, I thought this was really cool. Phil Hickerson, I miss the Phil Hickersons of wrestling. Because Phil Hickerson, while he looked like everybody's drunk uncle, the dude could absolutely go. There is no question in the talent that Phil Hickerson had, in my opinion. Some people may not have liked him as much. That's your opinion as well. But to me, he was an absolute stud. Coming from that, we get into our main event of the evening, which leads we go back to an interview with Fire and Flame out again. Roger Smith has a different mask on. They're doing an interview, which brings out Hickerson and Giant Hillbilly, which leads to another brawl. They brawl out of the arena, which leads us to our main event of the evening, or the main event of the show. Jeff Jarrett, Pat Tanaka, and Paul Diamond, which if you've watched these shows before, you know how much I love Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond. I like Jeff Jarrett too. I think Jeff Jarrett gets a lot of unwarranted heat for what he did in TNA. I digress. They're going up against the Mod Squad, which is Mac and Jim Jeffers and Ron Sexton. Mod Squad, another underrated team. They were really good. This was a really solid main event, a really good 6-man tag team match. We get basically, I don't know if it was the plan or they started running out of time, but Sato and Goto come out. I almost said Gato. Sato and Goto came out with JD Costello, and because JD Costello was also the manager of the Mod Squad at this point. They come out and cause a disqualification for Jarrett, Tanaka, and Diamond to pick up the win. Then Smothers comes out with Benny Traylor and Jerry Garman here to run off the heels. We go off the air basically with a schmoz. The face team picks up the win. The heels get themselves disqualified. Very solid main event. Very, very much what I would expect, and I mean that in a good way, of CWA from this era. All in all, I'm giving that match a 4. I thought it was really solid. Overall, I thought this was another really solid show, another show worth watching. The video I have, there are some audio issues on the link, so I understand if you don't watch it all the way because of that, but I definitely recommend powering through those audio issues because it is going to be worth watching anyway. All in all, I'm going to give it a 4. I thought the show was really good. There was a lot of stuff I liked here. I liked Bam Bam. I liked Fire and Flame and Hillbilly and Hickerson. I like of course, I've gushed over them a million times by now. Tanaka and Diamond, I absolutely love them as a team. I love them as wrestlers. I like seeing a young Tracy Smothers here. Like seeing younger versions of Sato, Goto. All these guys, if you think about this, this is 1986. So fast forward 10 years. Tracy Smothers is a big star. Sato and Goto have been stars. Bambi Bigelow is a big star. Jeff Jarrett's a big star. Diamond and Tanaka have been champions in a bunch of different wrestling federations by that point. So you get to see those guys in their formative years here. And it was just a fun show, in my opinion. I thought it was a great show. I really enjoyed that. Again, I say this a lot. The Memphis wrestling from the mid-'80s, from the whole decade of the '80s, holds up very well even today. You could put the show on today with obviously you would have better editing and it would have better camera views, but it would still work in my opinion. And that's the thing about it. The thing about Memphis is their style translates to any generation. You could have put these matches on in the 50s and they would have worked. Could have put them on in the 70s, they would have worked, the 90s, or the 2020s, and they work in any generation. So, to me, the matches are timeless. With all that being said, smash that like button. Again, check out the links both for the show and for Bucky749 down here in the description. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and if you made it all the way to the end, let's put fire and flame in the comments for Don Bass and Roger Smith. I'm assuming it's Don Bass because that's who I know of as a fire and flame team at this point. Put fire and flame in the comments here. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and we've been walking in Memphis.